What's up, fam? It's me. I'm back with some updates and some information, and we're gonna have a history lesson tonight. We're gonna take a walk down through history a little bit tonight. But first, I want to say I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's staying safe. I hope everybody's being smart. I hope all foundational Black Americans are on code. If you are not on code, I hope you are getting on code. I hope you are educating yourself. I hope you are doing research. I hope you are not allowing what's going on mainstream media or YouTube or on these gossip channels or these gossip what do they call them? These little gossip sources and stuff. This gossip media. I hope you're not allowing any of that stuff to influence you. I hope you're just doing your own research. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, definitely pay attention to the voices of the new Black media. But like we always tell you, because now I consider myself a voice of the new Black media. But like we always tell you, you got to do your own research. You got to do your own research. You got to get in here. You got to find out this information. You got to see what's going on. And you got to see it for yourself. And you've got to do some critical thinking. You've got to think for yourself so that you can make the decision that's best for you. Okay? But we're going to get into all of that when we get into the history lesson. But first, I want to talk about and do a little bit of updating on what's going on as far as the Breonna Taylor situation is concerned. Okay? So let me maximize like I always do. All right, let's see here. Now, we got a couple of stories that I want to bring to your attention. But the first and most important is the fact that the grand jurors, the two grand jurors that have anonymously spoken out, those two grand jurors have now sit down and had an interview with Gayle King for CBS this morning. This came out yesterday, October 27, 2020, at 7:20 a.m. CBSnews.com. Breonna Taylor grand juror says Louisville police actions before her death were criminal. And there's a video in this article where you can actually, and I'm gonna let you hear a little piece of what they're saying. But there's a video in this article that actually where you can actually hear what the two grand jurors have to say. And it's very interesting that they're both men. One of them is white and one of them is Black. Okay, so let me read this to you. Two grand jurors in the Breonna Taylor case spoke on CBS this morning to co-host Gayle King in an exclusive interview set to air Wednesday. So it aired today. It'll air tomorrow. The two men, who asked to remain anonymous for their safety, said they were never given the option to consider murder or manslaughter charges, with one calling the police's actions and behaviors the night Taylor was killed criminal. And the one who called the criminal, according to the clip that we saw, was actually the Black grand juror. One of the jurors, juror number one, this is the first one that came out, released a written statement last week criticizing Kentucky Attorney General Cameron over the grand jury proceedings. In a September 23rd news conference, Cameron said his investigation found, and the grand jury agreed, that the two officers who opened fire from Taylor's doorway on March 13, killing her, were justified because they were returning a shot fired by her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. Because of that, Cameron said 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law were not applicable to the case. In King's exclusive interview, the two grand jurors disputed Cameron's public comments regarding the case and said they were never given the option to consider murder or manslaughter charges. Though juror number 2, who called Louisville police's actions criminal, said the entire operation that resulted in Taylor's death was full of deception. They were criminal leading up to this in everything that the way they moved forward on it, including the warrant. So he's mainly talking about everything that they did up until going to her apartment that night was criminal and full of deception. And we already know that they actually lied on the search warrant. Well, they lied on the affidavit to get the search warrant. This detective or whoever, John James, lied and said that a postmaster had actually confirmed and verified that suspicious packages were going to Breonna's house for Jamarcus Glover, when in actuality he never talked to a postmaster. He got in touch with Mattingly. Mattingly got in touch with police officers from the Shively Police Department, because the Louisville Police Department doesn't have any kind of working relationship with any of the post offices in that area, because like I told you, of all of that stuff that went on a few years ago about police officers opening up packages and all of this kind of stuff, and one of them stole $70-some thousand, and the only reason why they caught him is because he messed around, and when he was closing the package back up, he messed around and sealed his McDonald's receipt in the pack. It was just a big mess. But according to all of this, Mattingly told James that the police that the post office had confirmed that there were no suspicious packages, so that they knew that there were no suspicious packages going to her house. The postmaster, the man by the name of Gooding, he came out and he publicly said that he had told them that there were no suspicious packages and that nobody from the LMPD had got in touch with him, that another agency had got in touch with him and he had told them the same thing. So see, all of that was, the whole affidavit thing was a lie. And see, now the grand jurors are finding out all of this information, and it's making it, and they're realizing that they were lied to. Okay? Juror number 1 said they wanted to consider other charges, but were told there would be none because the prosecutors didn't feel they could make them stick. Authorities were executing a search warrant. We already know all of that. We don't feel like going into all of that. But now CBS is lying again, or misleading again. Now they're talking about she was shot at least 5 times. So it's gone from 8 to Daniel Cameron's coming out talking about it wasn't 8, it was 6, until now CBS is reporting 5. See how things change up when it's somebody black. See how things change up when it's a foundational black American. See how they keep switching things up and trying to lessen the blow of it as time goes on. This woman was shot 6. Originally, it was 8 times. I still believe it was 8 times. But if you go by Daniel Cameron, it was 6 times. Now, CBS is trying to say 5. She was shot at least 5 times. So the number just keeps dropping. They couldn't even provide a risk assessment, juror number 1 said of the police department. It sounded like they hadn't done one. He accused the department of being negligent throughout the entire process leading up to and after the night in question. Their organization leading up to this was lacking. That's what I mean by they were negligent in the operation, juror number 1 said. After Cameron's press conference announcing no charges directly linked to Taylor's killing, protesters took to the streets calling for justice in Breonna Taylor's name. Now fired Louisville police officer Brett Hankins. Okay, we know he got indicted on that wanton charges for shooting into the neighbor's apartment. He has pled not guilty. Police claim they identified themselves before entering the apartment. However, Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, said in a separate exclusive interview with CBS this morning that he was a million percent sure that nobody identified themselves. Well, we don't just need his word. There were over 24 witnesses that said the exact same thing. People that lived right there in the apartment complex. Some that lived right there in her unit that said nobody ever identified themselves. Even the so-called witness that they got talking about they parading him around saying that the police did announce themselves when he originally started talking back in March. He did 2 interviews saying that they did not identify themselves. It wasn't until 2 months later in May that he changed his story. So that's it. These grand jurors are speaking out. So I want y'all to hear just a little bit of what they had to say because, you know, we want to be careful about copyright. So, I just want y'all to hear a little bit of this audio of what they had to say.
When we started Carvana, they told us that selling cars 100% online wouldn't work. But we went to work, building an experience that lets you shop over 17,000 cars from home. Creating a...
Okay, here we go. That's the commercial that I muted. We're not interested in listening to commercials right now.
News exclusive. We're hearing from 2 of the grand jurors in the Breonna Taylor case. The 26-year-old ER technician was shot and killed inside her home last March in a botched police raid. No officers have been directly charged with killing Taylor. The jurors, who asked to be identified only as Grand Juror 1 and 2, tell CBS This Morning's Gayle King the entire jury wanted to discuss more charges against the officers.
So when you all look, Juror 1 and 2, and you're told that the only thing you need to consider right now is wanton endangerment, did anyone say, hey, are there any other options here? Did either of you say that?
Almost the entire room.
Yes, everyone said that.
What was the answer that you were given?
Basically, in a nutshell, they said there were other possible charges that we considered, but nothing that we could make stick, or that we felt we could make stick.
Both jurors call the police actions leading up to the raid negligent, and one believes they were criminal. You can see Gayle King's exclusive interview with the grand jurors tomorrow. That's only on CBS This Morning.
We asked super rich people if they preferred paying more with cable TV
Okay.
or paying less for their...
Now, we're not listening to anything about super rich people and cable TV. But let's go back. I want y'all to hear that again. You know, like I said, this is just because the whole interview will air this morning. Wednesday, it would air this morning because it's after 12 here on the East Coast. So it'll air this morning. But I wanted you to just hear a little bit of what the grand jurors were saying because that's that little snippet that CBS has released. Hold on a minute. Yeah, because I'm reloading it because I'm not trying to listen to all of that other stuff. Hold on, I'm just letting it reload.
We have only one standard when it comes to the quality of our cars. The highest. It's why only 1 in 10 cars...
That's just the commercial that I killed the audio on. Because again, we're not interested in the commercial.
You're hearing from two of the grand jurors in the Breonna Taylor case. The 26-year-old woman was shot and killed in her own home during a Louisville police raid back in March. No police officers were charged for the shooting. Taylor and at least one of the officers involved has defended their actions. We spoke with the jurors and their attorney, who say they were never given the option to consider murder or manslaughter charges. That contradicts statements made by the Kentucky Attorney General. We are not releasing the identities of the grand jurors at their request for their safety. Can I ask you what you both think of the police behavior and actions that night?
Negligent.
Negligent?
They couldn't even provide a risk assessment, and it sounded like they hadn't done one. So their organization leading up to this was lacking. That's what I mean by they were negligent in the operation.
Number two?
They were criminal leading up to this, and everything that the way they moved forward on it, including the warrant, was deception.
Yeah, you can see more of our exclusive interview with these two jurors. That's tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
So I just wanted y'all to hear, that's just a little piece, just a little snip of what CBS has released and is allowing us to see. You can see the whole thing tomorrow morning. Like I said, this morning, her exclusive interview with these two grand jurors. It's going to be interesting to hear what else these grand jurors have to say. It's going to be interesting to hear what else they wanted, what other information they asked for, the whole 9 yards, and they didn't get it, or maybe were told wasn't available or whatever. Because from what I'm understanding, they're going to go, when they speak out, they're supposed to go above and beyond what has already been released of the grand jury proceedings to the public. So it's going to be interesting to hear what they had to say. But it's obvious that this one juror, and this is the black man, it's obvious that he wants to bring the focus back to this search warrant. This search warrant that they obtained illegally, that they lied, they falsified the affidavit to get that search warrant. So so if you start right there, because without that search warrant, Breonna Taylor would be alive today. Without that search warrant, she would be alive today. Okay? So it's obvious that juror wants to start right there, because that is the beginning, and he wants to start at the beginning. Okay? So I wanted to bring you that little piece of information. Now I want to read a little bit of something to you about Mattingly. You know, Mattingly is the one that supposedly Kenneth Walker shot, although the ballistics report cannot conclusively say that the bullet that entered into Mattingly came from Kenneth Walker's gun. So since ballistics can't say that, basically what they're saying is that he didn't shoot him. The bullet did not come from Kenneth Walker's gun. Because had it come from Kenneth Walker's gun, they have very high-tech ways of checking markings and all of this kind of stuff to know what bullet comes from what gun. Okay? And considering the fact that supposedly the other officers on the scene all were carrying and using a .40 caliber, then I mean there should be no way that it came from anywhere else. You understand what I'm saying? Even though you still have mainstream media news sources still stating as a fact that Kenneth Walker shot Mattingly when the proof is not there to substantiate that. Okay, but the Colonel General, they did an interview with Mattingly October the 23rd, and I just thought it was real interesting, because now he seems to be kind of, maybe trying to distance himself from this a little bit and all that, especially now that it has come out that him and James, that's the guy who got the search warrant, him and James were, were in communication with each other and all this about this getting of this search warrant and about these so-called suspicious packages and all of this kind of stuff. So now all of a sudden he wants to speak out and he wants to clarify some things. In so many words, he wants to do some splaining. Like I said, this is Mattingly Hope's officer made a mistake in saying he gave info for Breonna Taylor warrant. You understand what I'm saying? They keep trying to act like these people made a mistake. You understand what I'm saying? Like it was some kind of mistake made. Like this woman ended up with at least 6 bullets in her behind a mistake. You understand what I'm saying? Like this James officer, like he made a mistake and lied on the affidavit to get the search warrant. See, everything is a mistake when they do it. By Darcy Costello and Tessa Duval. And it was October the 23rd, 2020. Jonathan Mattingly, the Louisville Metro Police sergeant shot during an attempted drug search that ended in Breonna Taylor's death, says a fellow detective misstated Mattingly's role in securing the search warrant that led police to her door. Detective Joshua James is under investigation to determine whether he falsified. Now, why is there a determination of whether he falsified or not? Why has that got to be investigated? He lied. The postmaster himself came out and said that at no time did he tell anybody that there was any kind of suspicious mail going to her house for Jamarcus Glover. But anyway, whether he falsified information, a Jefferson County Court circuit judge relied on to approve the search warrant for Taylor's apartment. Mattingly, 47, said he can't explain why James said Mattingly had verified packages for a suspected drug dealer were being delivered to Taylor's residence because he didn't tell Janus that. He didn't tell Jans that. And, when Jans did his interview, Jans said that Mattingly was the one that confirmed all of this stuff with the postmaster for him. So Mattingly was acting as he was running interference. You know what I'm saying? Because John got in touch with Mattingly. Mattingly got in touch with excuse me, y'all, the Shively police, and so Mattingly was, and considering the fact that he was on the team of police officers that were supposed to be serving this search warrant, I didn't think he was supposed to have any part in the actual getting of the search warrant, period. But anyway, hopefully it was a mistake on his part. Mattingly said in a Tuesday interview with the Courier-General ABC News, I can't answer for Detective James or what his thought process was. That's something that he's going to have to deal with. A lawyer representing James told the Courier-General on Thursday he was not prepared to directly address Mattingly's claims. James, who swore out the affidavit for Taylor's home and 4 others that night as part of a larger drug raid, has been placed on administrative reassignment pending an LMPD internal investigation. Well, that's the police investigating the police, so we know there ain't nothing gonna come of that. The Courier-General has previously reported James is expected to be part of an active FBI investigation into Taylor's March 13th death. James told police investigators in a May interview he had understood Mattingly to say that Jamarcus Glover, Taylor's ex-boyfriend and a main suspect in a narcotics investigation, was getting Amazon or mail packages at Taylor's home, which James said confirmed what he had observed at her Springfield Drive apartment. James admitted to those same investigators he did not personally verify with a postal inspector that suspicious packages were at Taylor's apartment, despite saying he had in his search warrant affidavit. So right there, he lied. Right there, clearly he lied. He told the investigators he said he had, but that he hadn't personally verified anything. Although on the affidavit, he claimed he did. There's your lie right there. You don't need to go any further. Investigators later described Jane's mischaracterization as misleading and suggested a possible criminal investigation. So see, when they lie, it's misleading. When they lie, it was a mistake. You understand what I'm saying? When their lies and their deceit and all of their foolery leads to somebody innocent's death, it was a mistake. It was misleading. No, he flat out lied. He flat out lied to get that search warrant because he didn't have anything else to use to get a search warrant for her house. Why? Because her house wasn't a part of that. In his interview Tuesday, Mattingly further disputed James's account. So see, now you got the officers going against each other. You understand what I'm saying? Now you got the snakes. Now that the innocent victim has been removed, and they don't have anybody else to attack, now they attack each other. Mattingly insisted he was not part of the narcotics investigation into Glover and acted solely as a liaison between law enforcement agencies. Okay, then if he was not a part of the investigation and not a part of the narcotics investigation into Glover, what was he doing at Breonna's house that night carrying out a search warrant? Why is his name all up in the mix? Based on the story that they tell, he was the first one in the apartment. I don't deal with any of these investigations other than connecting them with somebody else, Mattingly said. Mattingly was one of 7 detectives who tried to serve the search warrant at Taylor's apartment shortly before 1 a.m. March 13th. Okay, well, if you wasn't a part of none of this investigation, none of the narcotics investigation, none of that, then why were you at her house at almost 1 o'clock in the morning trying to serve a warrant? If you didn't know nothing about what was going on, because basically that's what it sounds like you saying. You didn't know nothing about what was going on. He and other police say they knocked and announced several times, then rammed in the door when they didn't get a response. Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, said he and Taylor heard pounding but never heard anyone say police. When the door burst open, he fired a shot with his Glock handgun. Police say the round hit Mattingly in the thigh. No, the police don't say that. The state police ballistics report says that they cannot conclusively say that it was Kenneth Walker's bullet or the bullet from Kenneth Walker's gun that went into Mattingly. But none of these people will tell the truth. None of these people will just report the truth. He and Detective Miles Cosgrove and Brett Hankerson fired 32 shots in response, hitting Taylor, who was unarmed, 6 times and killing her in her doorway. Now it's back to 6. You understand? CBS just said at least 5. Now it's back to 6. Misleading information on the warrant. On March 12th, the day before Taylor's death, Jana sought 5 search warrants from Jefferson County Judge Mary Shaw. 3 were for suspected drug houses on Elliott Avenue, where police expected to find Glover. 1 was for a house on West Muhammad Ali Boulevard, and the last was for Taylor's apartment. Shaw granted all 5. The warrant application for Taylor's apartment on Springfield Drive said officers had seen Glover's car frequently at her home and that 2 months earlier, Glover had walked inside and quickly left with a suspected UPS package in his right hand and drove straight to a known drug house. Glover, who was arrested the same day Taylor died, told the Courier General in August she had nothing to do with drugs and he only had clothes and shoes sent to her apartment because he worried they might be stolen at his house. James wrote on the sworn affidavit he had verified through a U.S. postal inspector that Glover had been receiving packages at Taylor's apartment. He hadn't verified anything. Speaking with investigators in mid-May, James admitted, I could have worded the affidavit a little bit differently there. Attorney Thomas Clay, who is representing Jans, said Thursday he had reviewed the search warrant affidavit line by line. Despite the controversy, and that's a controversy, of the UPS packages, Clay said, there is more than adequate information in that affidavit to establish probable cause to search Taylor's home. So, never mind the fact that he lied. You know, never mind that. Let's look over that. Let's deflect from the fact that he lied. That he blatantly lied to get this warrant. And let's just say, but even if he hadn't said that, even if he hadn't told that lie, there was still enough information to get that warrant. Okay, well, if there was enough information to get that warrant, then he should have got it without lying. But evidently, he didn't feel that there was enough information to get that warrant, so he point blank told a lie. Okay, but this is how Mattingly is trying to get out of it. Mattingly said he joined LMPD's parcel unit in September 2019. After learning for a few months from a retiring sergeant in the unit, Mattingly took over. In that position, he said he fielded calls from officers asking him to check into packages or addresses, including from James. I've got people calling me all the time. Hey, what about this parcel? Hey, can you check this location for me? I'm calling UPS. I'm calling FedEx. I'm calling Shively to see if Postal has anything or if they can flag a package. That doesn't mean he is part of any of those investigations, he emphasized in his interview. Okay, well, if you are not a part of the investigation, then what was you doing at the house that night? Why were you and Cosgrove and Brett Hankinson and the other officers, why were y'all there doing the search warrant and not SWAT? Why y'all didn't wait for SWAT? Why SWAT didn't know about the Springfield address like they knew about the other ones? SWAT didn't know anything about this raid going on at Breonna's house. I don't deal with any of these investigations other than connecting them with somebody else. Okay, Mike over here has a question. Call Joe over here. Here you go. That's the end of it. In fact, Mattingly said he didn't realize the Taylor warrant was connected to Janice's package request for Glover until a news report in May in which a postal inspector, Tony Godden, said his office had not confirmed packages were being sent to Taylor's address. So now he's claiming he didn't know anything about Janice constantly getting in touch with him, constantly asking him about Glover and all of this. He's trying to say he didn't know, he didn't realize that the Taylor search warrant had anything to do with the Glover request. He's trying to say that he didn't know anything about the search warrant for Breonna's house having anything to do with Jamarcus Glover until in May, 2 months after the murder of Breonna Taylor, because she was murdered. But if you go back to the report where James and you see where James was being investigated by the integrity unit, he talks about all of these different telephone calls over and over and over again. They were constantly getting in touch with each other. The guy from Shively said that, you know, he told him, you know, man, why y'all keep asking all of this? Are you trying to cover your ass or what? But now Mattingly is trying to act like his involvement in this was minuscule. And like he didn't know the connection between this and the connection between that and all of that. But yeah, you was the first one up in the house. So if you don't know anything about nothing, if you weren't part of the narcotics investigation, if you don't know anything about the search warrant, you just don't know nothing about nothing, why were you there at our house that night? Why were you the first one through the door? I never put two and two together that was the guy he asked me about back in January. It just didn't register. Now they go into asking, why didn't the LMPD ask the postal inspectors directly? And that's when Shively Police Sergeant Timothy Salyer and Detective Mike Kuzma, that's where they come in. And if you remember, it was Salyer that said, when he was talking to the investigators and they were questioning him, he was the one that said, he told Jans, man, what are y'all doing? You know, are you trying to cover your ass or what? You understand what I'm saying? Even after the fact, you calling me, still trying to get me to say that packages were being sent to this girl's house for this man. Mattingly sent a text message to Savage Police Sergeant Timothy Salyer and Detective Mike Kuzma, asking about packages for Glover to Taylor's address, and the two agreed to check it out. Kuzma told investigators he reached out to the postal inspector and reported to Mattingly there were no parcels, and that's pretty much the end of it. In the weeks ahead, two other LMPD detectives, Kelly Hannah Goodlett and Mike Nobles, also reached out to Kuzma. Both times he told them no, there was no history. Jans reached out to Salyer on April the 10th. Now this is after, nearly a month after this girl has been murdered. Jans reached out to Salyer on April 10th, nearly a month after Taylor's death, to ask again about mail for Glover at her address. Salyer told investigators he said no boxes, and there was not one there in months. After the affidavit for Taylor's apartment became widely reported in mid-May, Sawyer called Mattingly and Nobles to ask if their messages had been accurately relayed to Jans. Both men agreed they had told Jans there were no boxes. The LMPD officers had turned to Shively Police for verification because I'm getting hot. Because LMPD and the Postal Service no longer work together. Salyer told investigators, postal inspectors don't want any more dealings with Louisville Metro units because of bad blood from a past incident, he said. I already told y'all what that past incident was. Where the police officers that were a part of this so-called drug unit were actually taking these packages out of the post office, taking them out of the hub, opening these packages up, doing these illegal searches in these people's packages, closing them back up, and then using whatever information they gained illegally to go get an illegal search warrant. See, they been doing it. That's the reason why James felt like it was okay to do it. They been getting illegal search warrants. Mattingly said in his interview Tuesday, the conflict dated to a situation 2 years ago that he didn't know all the ins and outs of. Yeah, you do. You know good and well that they were stealing stuff out of there. That one of the police officers, and he was one of the big head ones, get $70-some thousand he stole. And the only way they caught him again was when he taped the box back up. He messed around and taped up his receipt from McDonald's in the box. They used the last 4 digits when it got to California where it was headed to. The police in California used those last 4 digits to trace it back to him. And that's when they found out that he had been stealing all of this money and all of this kind of stuff, and that they had been illegally opening up these packages from the hub and using that information that they got illegally to then turn around and get an illegal search warrant. So he know exactly why the post office don't fool with Louisville Metro Police Department. What does that tell you about a police department? When the postal service in that area won't work with and won't fool with a police department. What does that tell you about the police department? Okay? So that's all of this that I'm going to read. But it's obvious now that he feels like he needs to come forward and he needs to splain and he needs to quote unquote set the record straight and all of that. Why? Because James has thrown his name in the mix as far as all of this falsifying and all of this kind of stuff to get this search warrant. James has thrown his name in the mix. and made it clear that he was constantly in communication with Mattingly throughout that whole process, and that it was Mattingly who was in contact with the people at Shively to confirm whether or not any packages were being delivered to Breonna's house. Okay? So that's the reason why Mattingly is now trying to come out and explain and trying to distance himself from all this, because his name has been thrown up in the mix as far as this illegal affidavit to get that illegal search warrant. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's obvious that now that the grand jury is speaking out, that they're not going to just stop with that search warrant business. Somebody gonna take the fall for lying on that search warrant or on that affidavit to get that search warrant, okay? And there's one more thing I just found out that I hadn't heard before. And I found this real interesting. And I don't think mainstream media has reported on this or said anything about it, but I found it and I find it real interesting, so I want to share it with y'all. This is coming from WFPL.org. In email, Sergeant Mattingly encourages officers at protests to do what you need to do. This is by Jacob Ryan. This came out September the 22nd, 2020. As the city prepares to learn whether the Louisville Metro Police officers who shot Breonna Taylor will be indicted, one of those officers sent an email to LMPD colleagues saying their leaders are inept, scared, and unwilling to protect police officers like him. I'm sorry, the mayor, Amy Hess, and Chief Conrad failed all of us in epic proportions for their own gain and to cover their asses, Sergeant John Mattingly wrote in the early morning email, first reported by Vice News and independently verified by Kycir, K-Y-C-I-R. Mattingly said he was sorry his fellow officers had to deal with the protest, and he encouraged police to be strong and do what you need to do to get home to their families. Just do it with dignity and make sure you can justify your actions, because everything down there is recorded. So if you end up killing a few people, if you end up killing a few protesters or whatever, just be careful. Just do it with dignity now and make sure you can justify what you do, because everything that you're doing down there is being recorded. Mattingly was one of 3 officers who fired their weapons while executing a search warrant at Breonna Taylor's home in March. Her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, said they thought someone was breaking in when he fired what he described as a warning shot. Police said that shot struck Mattingly, who has been on paid administrative leave since the shooting. Taylor was shot 5 times. Now, there they go again with this 5 times lie. Like I said, it went from 8 to 6. Now we got folks reporting 5. Mattingly has not spoken publicly about the shooting. No video evidence has been released, as LMPD officials have said Mattingly and other plainclothes officers weren't wearing body cameras. Regardless of the outcome today or Wednesday, I know we did the legal, moral, and ethical thing that night by shooting somebody, by killing somebody. You did the moral, legal, ethical thing by breaking in somebody's home in the middle of the night and shooting them dead. It's sad how the good guys are demonized and the criminals are canonized. Now, what criminals is he talking about? What criminals would he be talking about? Because remember, Breonna Taylor did not have any kind of criminal history. Neither did Kenneth Walker. So what criminals is he talking about? What criminals have been canonized here? Because neither one of them had criminal records. You understand what I'm saying? There was no drugs. There was no money. There was nothing illegal found on her premises in her home that night. So what criminals is he talking about? Mattingly also referred to protesters as thugs who get in officers' faces, throwing bricks, bottles, and urine, and expect you to do nothing. Now, this is an email that Mattingly, because he pretty much at this point, this was done September the 22nd. You understand what I'm saying? Cameron came out with his bullshit and his lies on the 23rd, September the 23rd. So he pretty much already knew that they were going to walk. He already knew that. So that emboldened him to say how he really felt. And he sent this email to his fellow officers. Do what you need to do to make it home to your family. You understand what I'm saying? But just make sure you do it with dignity and make sure you can justify your actions, because everything that's being done is being recorded. Why? Because that's what they look for. They look for any kind of way to justify the killing of unarmed black people and say it's okay. Or you were justified. But that's the email that he sent. I just thought that was real interesting, that I hadn't heard anything about Mattingly sending any kind of email the day before Daniel Cameron comes out with this bullshit about nobody being indicted for the actual murder of Breonna Taylor. And also, in that last one I just read, that where he was doing all the splaining, down here at the end of the article it says, and I found this interesting too. But he said, I would never do another warrant again without questioning the investigator if I wasn't in it or if I wasn't involved in it. That's Mattingly, right? Mattingly has said he doesn't expect to return to the LMPD. So I guess he's not going back after his so-called administrative leave or administrative reassignment or whatever. He says he doesn't expect to return to the LMPD. So I don't know exactly what that means, because he wasn't fired. All I know is they're supposed to be on administrative leave or administrative reassignment or whatever until all of this investigation is over. But that's just a little email. You know what I'm saying? Once he had got the news, because you know they knew. Once he had got the word, once he had got his little text message or his little telephone call or whatever, letting them know that they were going to walk, that everything was all right, that nobody was going to be indicted for anything or charged for anything, it emboldened him. And he went on there and he sent out his little email expressing his real feelings. And yes, that will be in the description box so that you'll know what's going on. Now that's pretty much what I wanted to let y'all know as far as what's going on with Breonna, what's going on as far as Breonna's case is concerned and all of that. Now I'm gonna cut this one short because I was gonna do a little bit more. I'm gonna cut this one short and I'm gonna let that be a little short video of its own. And then the next one that I come with, we're going to get in depth with the history lesson. Okay? So I'm just going to leave this one here as an update on the Breonna case. And then when I come back, I'll come back with the history lesson. Okay? But yeah, y'all, all of this stuff will be linked in the description box. You can go in the description box. You can read this stuff for yourself. Make sure that you, if you want to, that you get this this interview that King is doing this morning with these grand jurors, so we can hear everything that they have to say as far as this case is concerned and how it was presented to them and all of that. But and like I said, I think it's real interesting that now Mattingly is trying to distance himself and he's trying to come out splaining and all of that. Now that his name has been thrown all up in the mix as far as this phony fake search warrant is concerned, and that affidavit that they lied on to get that search warrant. So y'all stay tuned. I'll be back in a little bit so that we can go on with this history lesson. But I'm just going to go ahead on and give y'all this because I think that's enough in this video for y'all to digest. And I'll come back behind it with the history lesson. So y'all please like the video. Please share. Please have these conversations. Let folks know what's going on. Let folks know how all of this stuff is coming out in this Breonna Taylor case. Please hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the channel, and hit the bell notification so you can be notified when we upload videos. But that's what I got for y'all now. Stay tuned. The history lesson is on the way, and I'll be back with y'all soon. Okay, you guys. I found another article where they continued to do, or they expounded on the interview that they had done with Mattingly, the Courier General and ABC, where he interviewed with Michael Strahan on 2020. And there's a part of that article, that interview, that I want to read to y'all. Mattingly said, every cop's biggest fear is shooting an innocent person. He reflected on a warrant from a decade earlier during which a suspect shot at him through a door. Mattingly didn't shoot back, and he later learned a baby and little girl were asleep inside the apartment. You want to do the right thing, Mattingly said. You want to be the one who is protecting, not up here looking to do any damage to anybody's family. That's not anybody's desire that I've worked with. When Taylor died on March 13, Mattingly's fear came true. She didn't deserve to die, he said. She didn't do anything to deserve a death sentence. Regardless of any connection to a narcotics investigation, Mattingly said police weren't there to act as the judge, jury, and executioners that night. Oh, well, that's what it sounds like they were there to do to us. But I want y'all to listen to this. I want y'all to pay very, very close attention to what I'm getting ready to read. What we were being was someone who's defending their lives against gunfire coming at them. That's what he said. So again, he's trying to go along with this whole self-defense bullshit. But Mattingly said police weren't at Taylor's house by happenstance. There's a reason the police were there that night, he said. And if you're a law-abiding citizen, listen very carefully. And if you're a law-abiding citizen, the only contact you'll probably ever have with the police is running into them in Thornton's. I guess that must be some kind of store or something like that. Or if you get a speeding ticket. Other than that, unless you know them, you're not really dealing with the police. And I think that's part of the problem, because the people who say there's all this injustice and that all that are the people who deal with the police in negative connotations. So naturally, their view of the police is going to be skewed and not good. Okay? So basically what he just said right there was, okay, no, she didn't deserve, just because we were there in connection to a narcotics investigation, no, she didn't deserve a death sentence. She didn't do anything to deserve to die, but he was still trying to make her out. Even in this interview, he was still trying to make this dead young woman who was a victim of being murdered by the police, he was still in some way trying to criminalize her. He was still in some way trying to make it sound like because of something she had done wrong, that's the reason why the police were there that night. And that's and by inference, that's the reason why she's dead now. Not because they did anything wrong. You understand what I'm saying? Not because the police did anything wrong, but because of something that she had done wrong. Because he said, but Mattingly said police weren't at Taylor's house by happenstance, which means we didn't just happen to be there. You know, we weren't just there, twiddling our thumbs. Well, we were there for a reason. That's it. There's a reason the police were there that night. This is him talking. And if you're a law-abiding citizen, you understand what I'm saying? Basically saying that the only people that are running afoul of the police, the only people that are ending up being murdered and slaughtered in the street and in their homes and all of this by police are people who are not law-abiding citizens. The only contact you'll probably ever have with the police is running into them in Thornton's or if you get a speeding ticket. Other than that, unless you know them, you're not really dealing with the police. And I think that's part of the problem, because the people who say there's all this injustice, all trying to minimize the injustice that black people have been dealing with and been suffering at the hands of the police, all this injustice and all that are the people who deal with the police in negative connotations. Okay, well, Breonna Taylor had never dealt with the police in negative connotations. As far as we know, based on her criminal record, she had never dealt with the police at all. I don't think she had a speeding ticket. But again, he's still trying to infer, he's still trying to throw it out there that there was some kind of criminal activity or something that she was involved with that had the police there that night. Even though we know for a fact that the police, this Joshua James, lied on the affidavit to get the search warrant. So in reading this article, I just wanted to point that out. And then this article goes on to point that out. However, records in the Taylor investigation show an array of police mistakes and policy violations in the case. For example, a detective included false information to obtain the warrant for the search of Taylor's home. Then Mattingly goes on to actually say that he felt like Kenneth Walker did know that it was the police at the door. Partly because you don't have that loud of a knock, that loud of an announce, that long, and people not know it's police. But listen how long the announcement would have been. The knock and announce wouldn't have lasted any longer than 5 to 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it. 5 to 10 seconds. And he claims that they wanted to give Taylor plenty of time. How is 5 seconds plenty of time? Even if they did announce themselves. But we got a myriad of witnesses who say that they didn't announce themselves. And we even have a conflict and a contradiction between what the so-called witness who said that he heard them announce himself and what they claim they actually said, that they knocked, please open the door, this is the police, we trying to serve a search warrant. That's how they claim they announced themselves at this door. Mattingly said he no longer expects to return to the Louisville Metro Police Department despite initially wanting to return to work. Asked what changed, the sergeant pointed to leadership, including the mayor's office and the public perception of him by some. He said his name has been so smeared that it likely will be unsafe for his family for him to return. Also, now he's going to try to pull the victim card. Now he's going to try to play a victim. But he can still walk around to make that kind of decision. Breonna Taylor no longer can make that kind of decision. But I just wanted to point that out to y'all. I just wanted to point out how even at this late date, after everything that has happened, all the information has come out, all the evidence that's being come out, and all of this, he's still trying to infer that she was involved in something criminal, and that's the reason why they were there that night, and them being there that night is what led to her being dead. He is even inferring that the only, unless, if you're a law-abiding citizen, you just ain't gonna have no run-ins with the police. The only contact you gonna have with the police is maybe you might meet up with them at a store or something like that, or if you get a speeding ticket. How many innocent black folks have died behind a simple traffic stop? Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, I think it was Walter Scott. Now, we're just talking about Alton Sterling. We're just talking about simple, run-of-the-mill, everyday traffic stops. And black folks lost their lives. So he's trying his best here not only to still criminalize the victim, but he's also trying to trivialize police brutality and the injustices that black folks face at the hands of the police. Tatiana Jefferson was in her home. She wasn't committing no kind of crime. It wasn't no traffic stop, no nothing. She dead. Breonna Taylor was in her home, in her bed. But now she's dead. And these are people, those two women we know for a fact didn't have any kind of criminal histories. No kind of criminal record whatsoever. Kenneth Walker didn't have a criminal record. But he's trying to infer here that if you're just an ordinary law-abiding citizen, the only contact you'll probably ever have with the police is running into them in Thornton's or if you get a speeding ticket. Well, driving while black is deadly nowadays. Well, it has been for years. But I just had to throw that in there. I just had to come back and let y'all know that I had read this. Again, he said she didn't deserve to die, he said. She didn't do anything to deserve a death sentence. Regardless of any connection to a narcotics investigation, Mattingly said police weren't there to act as judge, jury, and executioners that night. Okay, well, if that's not why y'all were there, then why is Breonna Taylor dead? Because the person who y'all claim shot at you, the person that you claim shot you, is not the person who's dead. The person who's dead is somebody who didn't shoot at anybody, didn't have any kind of criminal history, no kind of criminal record, and then when you searched her apartment, none of these drugs or packages or drug money or anything else that you claim was supposed to be there was there. So why is Breonna Taylor dead? But Mattingly said police weren't at Taylor's house by happenstance. Again, he is trying his best. Even after all of this, even after all of this time, he is still trying to criminalize the victim. He is still trying to criminalize Breonna and trying to throw it out there, trying to hint at she was doing something that she didn't have any business doing. There's a reason the police were there that night. And if you're a law-abiding citizen, now you put them two together, what does it say? It says that evidently Breonna wasn't a law-abiding citizen. But her criminal record says otherwise. And yes, this will also be listed in the description box. And y'all can finish reading it. But that was the thing with this article that stuck out to me the most. And that's the reason why I had to come back and I had to add this little section, is because I had to read that. I had to include it in this video. I couldn't talk about everything else and not include that part. She didn't deserve to die. So even though she was in part of a narcotics investigation, she didn't deserve to die. But law-abiding citizens, the only way you're going to run into the police is if you see them in the store somewhere or see them out shopping somewhere or you just happen to get a speeding ticket. So see, this is how these folks really feel. This is how these folks really feel. They feel like anything that happens to black people is justified. That's the reason why they go on this campaign. Anytime somebody white, somebody suspected white supremacist or one of these race soldiers or whatever, anytime they kill an unarmed person, they immediately set about to try to criminalize that person. They immediately set about looking all into this person's past, all on their social media, and all of this kind of stuff, trying to dig up anything that they can against the victim so that they can criminalize the victim, so that they can justify the murder of that innocent unarmed person. So I just wanted to bring y'all that. But that's it for that one. And like I said, be looking for the history lesson, because the history lesson is on the heels of this. All right, y'all have a good morning.